Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. I am bringing you amazing stories from amazing women in leadership from across the globe. Let's get started. We are here today with Annie Giagni. She comes to us from Maricopa, Arizona. If you don't know where that is, I sure didn't. It is in between Phoenix and Tucson, rural Arizona. She is the Interim Director of Nursing at Exceptional Community Hospital, Maricopa. Welcome to the show, Annie. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Christine. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Annie grew up in West Los Angeles, and she lived the quintessential West Coast dream as a surf instructor, aquatic athlete, and ultimate beach girl. After moving away from LA, she completed 2 bachelor's degrees in 2 different states, working an array of interesting jobs. I want to hear more about that, Annie. And then Annie landed in rural Arizona. I always say that we are a sum of our experiences, and this influences our perception of the world. So Annie, I want to know your story. How did you get where you are today, and how have these unique experiences shaped who you are?
I am in my 9th year as a registered nurse. I have had leadership roles in nursing in the past, which kind of led me to landing this job. It's a micro hospital, so it's real tiny. So it's been a huge learning curve for me there as well. But I'm a pretty adaptable person, and um, I've had these really interesting jobs over the last, gosh, like 20 years that I think have just given me a unique perspective on leadership, work ethic, and like what it takes to kind of get to where you want to be. My very first job was as a surf instructor in Santa Monica, California. That's where I grew up. I did that for 4 summers. And by my second summer, when I was, gosh, I think I was 17, almost 18, I was kind of the location manager. And so that was kind of just like my first job and led to leadership. And from there, the rest is history, really.
Yeah, we talked about this when we first met a little bit about how, you know, you wouldn't necessarily say, "Hey, I'm a natural leader." Like when you're 17 years old, you're not like, "I'm a natural leader, give me a manager job."
Right.
How did you end up in a manager role at such a young age? Like, what was it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And sometimes looking back on it, it's hard for me to kind of pinpoint that exactly because it's so long ago that there's parts of me that just don't even really remember exactly what kind of a person I was, even at 17. But I had, prior to that, I had always been a leader in my sports teams as well. So all through high school, always voted most inspirational, um, team captain. I played water polo. I played soccer, but that wasn't really through high school, but swim team as well. And just for swim team and water polo in high school, I was most inspirational and team captain. And I felt like those 2 things kind of go hand in hand with leadership. Um, everyone wants to be the MVP, but really the leader of the team is the team captain and the most inspirational person there. So I think that part of my personality really is what caught the attention of my boss.
I want to circle back to working in Maricopa for a minute. I mean, most
Yeah.
motivational, you're a leader, you've been there for a little bit. What made you go into nursing, and what about administration in hospital is appealing to you?
Yeah, so hospital administration just kind of came naturally. My second job as a nurse was in Portland, Oregon. I was working on a adult cardiac unit. It was something I grew to be very knowledgeable and passionate about. And I was working at a magnet hospital, which, for those of you that don't know what a magnet hospital is, it is something that is very nurse driven. So they take the thoughts and the suggestions and everything from nursing very seriously. They are very protocol driven, they are very outcome driven, and a lot of these are from a nursing standpoint. And so, based on that, they are by nature, there are committees, tons of committees. lots of opportunity to step away from patient care, but also like kind of work it from the back end of like, how can we do this better? I was really drawn to those committees, got involved after a year or so of being at that hospital, being in these committees, kind of growing with my team, helping my team develop and obtain these, like, kind of um, these goals that we were trying to reach. Everything's very goal oriented, and how can we improve our scores, and how can we improve our outcomes? And so it happened that somebody in an assistant manager charge nurse role above me had stepped into a manager role, and I was up for that position, and I took it. And if I hadn't moved to Arizona, I'd probably still be in that position. But it's definitely working at a magnet hospital where everything's nurse driven, is something that I carry with me still. And so when I had gone back to the bedside initially moving to Arizona, I really kind of longed for that type of environment of um, achieving greatness in the hospital and not just getting by, and kind of longing for that magnet hospital vibe. So when the opportunity presented itself for this tiny micro hospital in the little town I'm living in, I jumped at it. I've been there a little over a year now. Um, and it's kind of a startup. It's only been open 18 months. So we're just kind of like figuring things out. I'm figuring things out as one of the newer leaders there. We're figuring things out as far as like, how do we fit into this community? We are the only hospital within 32 miles, so that's kind of an interesting little um, piece of what I do. Is we are more of a rural access without officially being rural access. So the community that we serve is a small town of about 70,000. We are kind of sandwiched between two Indian reservations, which are also present some challenges in itself, different demographic, different geographic location. Um, and I also set to serve my staff. So not just the patients and the people of the community, but my staff that work for me as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You talked about really achieving greatness together and being a motivational support for your staff. What kind of leader are you, and how do you acknowledge and maximize your strengths?
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely the type of leader that I think is my strength is really bonding with the people that I'm trying to help achieve and achieve goals with, right? So I connect with my staff on a personal level. They're not just the people that are taking care of the patients on the floor. They are the backbone of the hospital. They're what keeps the doors open, and they're taking care of people. And in order to keep that momentum going in the right direction, a positive direction, they have to feel supported, appreciated, and they have to feel like they're in I think, a family environment. And so I really kind of try to encourage and foster that environment of feeling like a family.
So I want to differentiate that you're a beautifully lovely, strong, wonderful leader that wants a healthy family.
Yes,
But
absolutely. Yes.
right. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of
for sure.
there's a lot of organizations that say, oh, we're like family, but it ends up being, well, toxic, dysfunctional family. And I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day about this. Like, if your boss says you're like family, it's a red flag. Tell me what positive, healthy family looks like to you.
Yeah, I think the piece of that that really stands apart from just being colleagues is caring about each other as people outside of the workplace. And I think, you can remove the toxicity from that, and still, even in a toxic family, people still care about each other. So,
Healthy
like,
boundaries, healthy
right,
boundaries.
healthy boundaries, absolutely. It's something I work on. It's been, that's something you have to work on forever, is healthy boundaries. I mean, I'm now, as the interim role, it's this overbearing amount of work and having to try to set boundaries while also getting the job done is really, really hard. And so, yeah, I'm constantly learning how to do that for myself. Um, and also trying to help my staff set those boundaries as well. Um, and also, in healthcare, we're seeing a lot of it come out more in the last, I'd say, couple years about like harassment of hospital staff by patients and families. And so, kind of coaching my staff through dealing with toxic environment that's not brought on by the workplace. Yeah, it's creating that family vibe in a sense of just kind of caring for each other, like taking a moment to also know what our colleagues are needing personally, right? So if one of my staff is going through a crisis at home, knowing that crisis and helping them navigate that as far as work is concerned, and lending a listening ear, understanding, compassion, the things we do for our patients, I also try to do for my staff. We recently had one of my employees, one of the nurses, she had a situation at home that had to take her out for like a week and a half. It was sudden. She was worried about it, but she felt comfortable coming to me and telling me specifically. And she didn't have to tell me anything. She could have just taken the time. But I want my staff to feel like they can come to me because when I knew more about what was actually going on, it was easier for me to give compassion.
One of the biggest mistakes we've ever made in professional environments is to believe and practice the belief that we can separate our personal selves from our professional selves. And I say it's the biggest mistake because that means we have to leave half of ourselves at the door when we walk in to work, and that's just not possible. We're human beings, we're complex, dynamic, emotional beings, and the more we can bring our whole selves to work with healthy boundaries, the more we can do that, the more care creates the space for
Mhm.
real true success. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, yeah, with the healthy boundaries, like leave the drama at the door. But if you're having feelings that are real feelings for that person, I don't expect them to not come in with, you know, any baggage or emotion or anything like that. I do expect that they're not going to cause drama in the workplace, but um, I I think especially for the type of career this is, with nursing, with the type of, grace and compassion we're supposed to show our patients and their family members, I think it's impossible to ask them to completely check their emotions at the door. Uh,
Absolutely.
we we joke as healthcare professionals, relentlessly and probably wildly inappropriately at times, about our career to keep us level-headed because it is such an emotional investment.
Yeah. And I think recognizing that that emotional investment has to extend to each other is incredibly critical to keep that inclusivity and keep the engagement and keep the care alive at work.
Yeah. Yeah, and having fun together too in a way that's not like necessarily blurring lines, but that allows people to feel a little bit of sense of like accountability and responsibility to their team. I feel like if people connect outside of work, they connect better at work. And we work in small teams because we are a tiny hospital. So we work with a very, very small staff on at any time. And so I think it's really important that we feel value in the relationships at work because otherwise impossible to be there.
Right. What would you say is your biggest challenge or roadblock right now?
Our growth in the hospital is a really big challenge right now. We are so rural, finding staff who are committed to being in a place that's essentially a startup, having faith that we will grow and continue to be a very crucial element of this town. I think that's the hardest part right now is figuring out, our niche. What do we mean to this city? What do the people view us as? And that's been healthcare is always a challenge I think, with what expectation versus reality anyway, and then trying to figure out how we maintain a positive view here in our little city, while trying to grow and develop, I think is a big challenge. And staffing it, just with the kind of remote region that we are in. People are used to traveling outside of this town, commuting an hour to work. So we have to be able to offer an environment, that people believe in.
Um, I think it's a huge discussion across the economy right now, across the markets, across the industries, where every industry leader you talk to is concerned about staffing, and that there is a big staffing issue. And I think you touched on something really important just now, which is if you can create the space and the type of place somebody wants to work and live, that might be a key to trying to get that staffing you need. What are your thoughts on kind of the staffing issues and the ways that you're trying to battle them, or accept that these are the challenges and we're going to have to face it with these kind of strategies?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I have accepted that it'll probably be a ongoing battle. I think my goal over the last, you know, several months of taking this interim position, covering the entire facility and not just my side of the inpatient unit, um, is really building the kind of culture that keeps staff from going anywhere else. And that word gets out that this is a healthy place to work. And that as the facility stays in our community and becomes more of a presence, and everything, people realize that we are here and what we do and what we can offer, that draws people in. And I'm seeing that change, recently. Our staffing has been actually pretty great, as of late. Um, and I hope it stays that way. And I hope that it the people that I've, managed to kind of bring on and build up continue to feel supported, and I think they want to continue working there.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
Part of the work that I do is in the executive leadership coaching space for women, and helping women really step out of their comfort zones and into these transformational learning spaces. When we go on an adventure, or when we step into nature, or when we go outside, or when we travel, when we have these out of comfort zone experiences, we learn a lot more about who we are and what we're capable of. Do you have an experience or an adventure that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I've got a pretty, hilarious story, to share about, leadership in my youth. Um, so when I was in college, I played water polo, and, that kind of led me to assistant coaching a high school team. Um, at one point after that first year of assistant coaching, the entire team got dumped on me as a, hey, now you're the head coach. So there I was at 20, 21 years old, head coach of a boys high school water polo team. And I was definitely in over my head. I don't think I could have quite possibly been more over my head in my entire life.
I can think of like 1,000 reasons that could be true. Probably most is testosterone at that age.
Yes, teenage boys are a challenge in and of themselves. They are quite possibly the most unpredictable group of people that I've ever met. You could have one kid show up one day and be the best rule follower, and then the next day they're whatever is going on in their life, whether it be hormones or, a class crisis or girlfriend situation or what have you, friend situation, and it is derailed. And the only time you deal with kids, you're also dealing with an array of home environments. And so you've got a vast variety of personality and what they are experiencing in their personal lives at home and what that brings out of them when they're in a group. So,
Well, let's add on that you're a 21-year-old, beautiful, smart, capable woman who is not too much older than these guys.
right. Yeah, that was terrifying to me. Trying to command respect
Right.
really was something that worried me so much during that time. In fact, we had a opportunity to go to a tournament. So I was living in Eugene, Oregon at the time. Portland's about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive away. We get invited to this tournament, and I'm like, they're ready to do something new. We can't be the small town team that doesn't go anywhere forever. And being a part of a team for the University of Oregon, we traveled a lot for our tournaments, and so I felt like this might be something I could handle. So we entered the tournament, but that meant that I had to somehow get these like 12 boys between like 15 and 17, 2 hours away for an entire weekend.
Uh,
So I did have an assistant coach who was a friend of mine, and the two of us, similar age, similar presentation as far as personality, and um, both young women, is still in college, and we were like, we got this. But I remember feeling so terrified that I actually held a conference for the parents, and I invited them to the pool during the warm up time of our practice. And I was like, I had printed up a document that was like, here's the entry fees, here's the hotel that we're booked at. I'm asking for parent chaperones because I was like, I can't bring these boys by myself 2 hours away. I don't know how that's going to work. So, surprisingly, zero parents stepped forward to chaperone this trip. A bunch of them attended the meeting and very confidently left it in my hand.
you got this, girl. And I get a whole
Yeah,
weekend without my son. I'm out.
yeah, exactly. 100% how I felt, that they were kind of like, nope, he's your problem for the weekend. So I was mortified, very anxious, very nervous. I remember feeling like something terrible was going to happen. Um, One of the boys is going to go missing or something, and I'm going to have to answer to these parents at the end of this weekend.
So how did you make sure they didn't go missing?
Well, we ended up staying at a hotel that was like across the street from the facility that we were going to be having a tournament at. So I made sure that we didn't have to travel far, or be, super early to anything. It was a very easy transition from the hotel to the pool. So um, I think that was kind of key strategy for me. And also, uh, having the boys split up by personality in the different rooms so that I wasn't having the troublemakers kind of all in one space. And I actually taped, I duct tape on the outside of these boys' doors because I was like, if you
Oh,
leave,
that's
I will
great.
know.
Oh, that's so great. So you taped
And
the
I
out.
feel
So
like,
you had them go in the room and then you taped the outside.
correct.
Genius. This is genius.
And I mean, keep in mind, this is long enough ago that we did not have smartphones. Most of these kids did not have cell phones. Uh, I barely had a cell phone. I think I had one of those brick Nokia phones that I dropped at the bottom of the pool a couple times coaching, and who knows how well it was working at the time. So, like, this was just, I had these boys with no contact with their families for a whole weekend. And I was like, you are staying in your rooms.
Man, Annie, unique experiences indeed that have shaped you and your leadership career. we are voracious learners. We are engaged in the meaningful work that we are so passionate in doing. And we all recognize that we are only as good as the knowledge that we gain, and that we're continuously looking for new knowledge. Do you have a book or a podcast or resource that you would like to suggest to our women listeners?
Pretty recently, I discovered a podcast called Nurse Leader Network. I don't think they're actively doing episodes anymore, but there's so many of them that it's taken me a while to kind of get through a lot of them. It's led by a woman named Recinos, and she's got an interesting eclectic background um, that also um, kind of inspires me a little bit. And she brings on this like, great group of nurse leaders and talks about their journeys and their styles and their challenges and what they did to get to where they are. And I've found it a really great way for me to connect not just to leadership, but to the specific challenges in healthcare. And then a book that I had come across a while ago that the gist of it really spoke to me was that it's called Leaders Eat Last. Um, and I just feel like that kind of embodies a little bit of like how I am as a leader as well. I support my staff before I support myself generally. I don't forget about myself and I don't not take care of myself. It's just giving my staff the space to feel like a priority because without them, the business is nothing. The staff, like they need to feel like they are important and you need to put yourself first, but you also need to make sure that they see you working in the trenches with them. And so I just like it really kind of that book kind of has always spoken to me.
Yeah. What I like about that book, it's by Simon Sinek. He also does some really great videos, like short clips about some of the stuff he is a leadership expert in. The Leaders Eat Last. What I liked about that book a lot was that it makes you think about the healthiness of how you take care of yourself and others. That if eating last means it's 9 p.m. and you're exhausted and you're starving, that's not taking care of your people the way that you need to take care of your people. So it's like figuring out how to take care of your people and yourself within, a really healthy way of
Yeah.
handling workload, work efficiencies, work environment, work community. And I think he did a great job in that book of really helping people think about those things.
Yeah, it definitely isn't about putting yourself last. It's about learning to balance putting your staff as a priority while also maintaining your own sanity and health.
Is there something that you wish I would have asked you, or something that we should know about you before we end our time together today?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last time we chatted, just how lonely leadership can be. Um, it's definitely something that kind of brought me to seeking out the environment that you create with your leadership adventures and everything. And I um, am so appreciative that there are people out there who kind of try to make that connection for other leaders because it can be very lonely, especially living in a rural community, especially in healthcare. Um, I find that it's very hard to make friends because they're either my employees or they've been patients at the facility I work at, and it's very challenging.
We talk about that a lot across this community. We like to talk about the tough stuff sometimes, and the fact that leadership is lonely because we do have to have certain accountabilities and responsibilities and boundaries, and it creates the space where you have to regulate your own emotions a lot. You have to regulate what you say to who. It's really hard to be a real leader personally and or leave the leadership hat at the door to be able to just be a person. It is a responsibility that we all take really seriously, but also can be a real burden when it comes to personal connections.
It's definitely been something that's been challenging. So I'm definitely really grateful to be connecting with your community.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this community is full of really amazing women looking for those connections, looking for the community to be a whole person and be able to share the things that we all experience. I love that we have all these options to getting together. I know we're not in everybody's town, but we like to break down the borders and remind ourselves that we're just a phone call away, or we can just get on a virtual event and there you are, or show up at a location that we do some adventures in. It does make you feel a little less lonely. I think this community does a good job of that. There's a lot of meaningfulness in the connections that we make here. So thank you for feeling that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing it with me.
Well, you can find Annie on LinkedIn, and we're going to give you a LinkedIn link in the description of this podcast episode if you would love to connect with her and see more about what she's up to. We will also have the links to her recommendations, both the podcast of the Nurse Leader Network with Chris Recinos and the book recommendation for Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. We'll have those links for you in the description. Thanks so much for being here today. What a fun show.
Thank you, Christine.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. I am Christine Fauner, your executive leadership expert, continuously looking for those executive leaders that seek community, continuous learning, and have a desire to find the next adventure. Join us next time. Join our Facebook group, Roam Your Soul, and you can also find us on Instagram at Roam Your Soul. And don't forget to check out the website for upcoming adventures, www.roamyoursoul.com. And if you're looking for that next executive level leadership coach, you can find me at roamyoursoul.com/Christine Fauner Coaching.